So far throughout the course, we've explored user interaction with simple tools like the input box and the message box. The next step in our progress is a more custom interface for the user to interact with. That custom interface is called the user form. A user form at the heart of it is a basic dialog box or a pop-up box. We see plenty of dialog boxes in Excel. For example, if I click formulas right here and open the insert function box, this is an example of what a user form that we create might look like. If we take a look here, we have a box where the user can enter text. That's called a text box. We have what's called a command button, which is just a button that the user can click. We have one here with go. We have two more down here, OK and cancel. We have a drop down that the list can choose an option from. And then we have this additional list that is a little bit more visible where the user can scroll through and view their list of options. So this is an example of the kind of box or user form that we can create using VBA. Every element on a user form, whether it be a text box or a command button or even something like this, which is called a label, that's just text that's going to be displayed, every one of those elements is called a form control. A control is just a way that we can display data to the user or perhaps get their input, get them to select something, get them to modify it, get them to interact with the form as a whole. So each one of these things is called a form control. A form control is embedded directly into the user form. And behind the scenes, every form control is just a plain VBA object. So as we know, all objects are going to have properties. Those properties are going to be both readable and writable. And objects are also going to have methods on them. So every form control is an object that we can call methods on. And the entire form itself is a separate VBA object with its own properties and methods. Let's go ahead now to the Visual Basic Editor and go ahead and create our very first user form. So I'm going to click out of this with cancel. Let's go to Developer. Let's go to Visual Basic. Here we are in the VBE. We can create a user form here by right-clicking on Microsoft Excel Objects and going down to Insert. Instead of selecting Module, which is what we've done throughout most of the course, this time we can select User Form. That's going to create a new user form. And it's going to actually pop up a few things on the screen. This thing right here is our actual user form. This is where we're going to be putting our form controls. This is our canvas, if you will. Right here to the left, we see that this toolbox pops up. So I'm going to click this. You can actually drag it to wherever you want on the screen. The toolbox is essentially our list of available tools. So these are all of our controls, our checkboxes, our text boxes, our labels, our buttons, etc. We're going to be diving into these controls over the course of this section. What we can also do here is actually expand the user form. All we have to do here is simply click into it, select it, click one of these things, and simply drag them, any one of the corners. So let's make our user form a little bit bigger. That's good. By the way, if the toolbox is not showing up, for example, you get something like this, you can click on View and Toolbox, and that'll bring it up. And this again is draggable wherever you want it. This is essentially your palette as an artist. Here on the left-hand side, you can see that we've had a new folder created within this project. It's called Forms. So all of our forms will be nested inside of here. They're kept separate and distinct from modules. You'll also notice that the form has been given a default name of UserForm1. It's going to follow the exact same naming structure as it does with modules, which is just going to be the name UserForm followed by the order. So our first UserForm will be UserForm1, followed by UserForm2, followed by UserForm3. We can, of course, change the name of this form, and that's available right here in the Properties window. The very first property actually right here is this name in parentheses. The reason it appears in parentheses is so it can be structured at the very top of the list. This list, of course, is alphabetical. So what we can do here is change the name of this form by editing this property. And I'm going to give it a name of FRM Employees. And I'm going to explain this in just a second. Once I click Enter here, you'll notice that the name of our form has changed right here. This is the name, but this is only the technical name. This is what we're going to be using to refer to the form whenever we're going to be, for example, accessing a property on it or calling a method on it. This is not what actually appears on the form when it is visible by the user. Here we see UserForm1 is still what's going to be displayed whenever this form is rendered. In fact, what we can do is if we click into the form and we press our traditional play button or even the keyboard shortcut F5, we're going to get the form. Here it is, right? Right now there's nothing on it. It's just kind of a blank canvas, but here at the very top, we have the name UserForm1. How can we switch that? Well, I'm going to click out of it. That's going to take us back to our Visual Basic Editor. The property that's used to edit this section is actually called caption. So caption right here is still has a default value of UserForm1. So we can change this to something more presentable. Let's change that to employee form. And now when I click F5 to execute the form, let me just make sure we're clicked into it first. F5, there it is, employee form is going to appear at the very top. As a heads up, the naming convention that I used, which is FRM employees, is based on a very popular community standard in the VBA community, where we first use a 3-letter prefix to describe the type of object it is. In this case, it's a form, and then we describe the actual data entity or its given name. So this is a form for employees. If we had multiple user forms that are going to be used within this workbook, we'd have FRM followed by whatever that form represents. And this is a common convention for all of our form controls as well. For example, a text box is going to have the 3-letter prefix TBX. We're going to dive into why this is so in the next lesson, but for now, I just want to reiterate that this is a optional preference. This is just a naming convention. This can be whatever name you want to give it. You can call it my form. You can call it, great form number 1. This is just a very common convention to give it FRM whenever you have a form followed by the actual name of the form. Another thing I want to point out here is that when we look at our properties here, we have this alphabetic category and this categorized pane as well. When we go into here, the actual properties that we see are going to be exactly the same. So it doesn't matter which one you use. Of course, the difference is on alphabetic, all of them are organized in alphabetical order. So you can kind of find the one you're looking for by its position in the alphabet. In categorized, the properties are going to be stored underneath a kind of a categorization structure. So they're going to be organized by appearance, behavior, font, miscellaneous things, picture, position, etc. So all of them are going to be present. For example, our name, which is the technical name that we give to the user form, is available here under miscellaneous. Here it's going to be available alphabetically near the top. That's all there is to cover in this lesson. We talked a little bit about user forms. We created our very first one. We changed the technical name of the form using the name property. We changed the appearance of the form using the caption property, which is what's actually going to be displayed on the top of the form when it renders. We talked a little bit about different properties and some of the options available to us in the toolbox, which we see right here. And in the next lesson, we're going to go ahead and start exploring some of these controls. And I'm also going to give you a brief overview of how this naming convention was created and why it exists.